A successful London solicitor, James Manning, seems to lead an almost perfect life. He has a prestigious job, a comfortable income, and a beloved wife, Anne. The couple divide their time between London and a large country house in Buckinghamshire. The man devotes most of his time to work. Even when Anne asks him to come home early, another important meeting can easily disrupt their plans. Still, that evening James manages to get out of London and join his wife in the country. The next day the couple attend a local charity cricket match. While James plays, Anne helps the organizers and sells raffle tickets. There, the woman notices Bill Boole, the son of local aristocrat Lord Roston. After several years living in New York, Bill has returned to England and is rumored to be planning to settle nearby again. He was once married but is now divorced, and his 2 sons live in London. Soon Anne meets Bill in person. The man comes across as charming, self-assured, and slightly sardonic. Maggie Pierce, the Mannings' housekeeper, approaches them. It turns out that the woman once worked for Bill's parents for many years, back when his mother was still alive. The reunion is clearly less than warm, although no one explains the reason for the tension. Later, Anne suggests that she and her husband throw a small party for the neighbors. In her view, they are always accepting other people's invitations but hardly ever invite anyone themselves. James is far from enthusiastic about the idea. He is not particularly fond of country social life in general. Still, after his wife promises that all he will have to do is show up and have a drink, the man reluctantly agrees. On the day of the party, James is delayed at work again. He has to meet someone who has come over from Paris specifically to see him, so he warns Anne that he will arrive much later than the guests. The woman handles the preparations on her own. She even has to borrow extra glasses from Bill for the party. Late that evening, James finally arrives at the station. Anne meets her husband and tells him that the party is already over. But Anne has not come alone. Bill Boole has driven her to the station. While talking to his neighbor, James notices a fresh scratch on Bill's Range Rover. When the man asks about it, Bill casually replies that he probably scraped a gate or that some jealous person scratched the car. The next day Maggie calls the Mannings and tells them that her husband, Joe, was hit while riding his bicycle along a narrow country lane. The man is in the hospital in serious condition, and immediately decides to visit Maggie. At first James does not understand what they can do to help, but his wife insists that the woman at least needs their support right now. At the hospital, Maggie tells the couple that she saw the accident with her own eyes. Joe was almost home when a car overtook him and apparently clipped the handlebars of his bicycle. Maggie did not have time to make out the make of the car, but she remembers the most important detail. It was a large SUV, something like a Jeep or a Range Rover. The woman's words make James think of the fresh scratch on Bill's car. A little later, he stops by the Boole house to return the glasses borrowed for the party. There James runs into Bill and his father, Lord Roston, again. The conversation happens to turn to the accident. When Bill hears that Maggie saw a Range Rover, he merely laughs. Around here, practically every other person owns one. But then James learns an interesting detail. On the night of the accident, Bill and his father drove to the party separately. According to Bill, he had some kind of meeting beforehand and went straight to the Mannings' house afterward. Later, Anne calls her husband with bad news. Joe Pierce has died in the hospital. After the funeral, James cannot get what happened out of his mind. One evening, he asks Anne exactly what time Bill arrived at their party. His wife says it was around 7:30. The man then admits that he suspects Bill may have had something to do with Joe's death, and immediately objects. According to her, Bill came from the opposite end of the village and said that he had been with the Northbrooks before the party. But James becomes even more suspicious. Bill had told him something quite different, that he had come straight from a business meeting. James invites Bill to lunch in London and asks him outright whether he was the one who hit Joe Pierce. Bill calmly replies that he had nothing to do with the accident. But James has already checked his story. The Northbrooks were not even in the country that evening. They did not return from Spain until the weekend. Cornered, Bill suddenly admits that it was his car that hit the cyclist. The man does not show much remorse, however. He insists that what happened was an accident and that nothing can be done to change it now. James is outraged by this reasoning and demands that Bill go to the police voluntarily. Bill reluctantly agrees to do so the next day. When James returns home, he tells Anne everything. But his wife's reaction is nothing like what he expected. The woman starts trying to convince her husband that there is no point in sending Bill to prison because punishment will not change anything. James cannot understand why Anne is suddenly defending a man who is practically a stranger to her so fiercely. Finally, Anne admits that she was in the car with Bill at the time of the accident. The woman explains that before the party she realized they were short of alcohol and also could not find the keys to her own car. So she called Bill and asked him to drive her to the store. But Bill was not the one behind the wheel of the Range Rover when the accident happened, and was driving. Only a few hours earlier, James had demanded that Bill confess without hesitation. But letting his own wife go to prison proves far more difficult. James begins arguing that the police have almost no evidence. And then his wife tells him another truth, one that hurts the man far more than the accident itself. Anne is having an affair with Bill. The unexpected confession completely knocks James off balance. Despite the affair, he has no intention of turning it over to the police. Instead, he takes a few days off and takes his wife away to Wales. Alone together, the couple speak openly about their relationship for the first time. James tries to understand what Anne was missing with him. The woman says that it is not really about him. Being with Bill is simply easy for her. He does not demand anything from her or make her feel that she constantly has to live up to certain expectations. With James, it is different. The conversation gradually turns to the fact that the couple have no children. James suggests that perhaps a child might once have made their family stronger. Anne reacts painfully, reminding him that she did try to get pregnant and eventually simply gave up hope. Despite their mutual resentments, the couple decide to try to start over. Anne promises to end her relationship with Bill. James in turn suggests leaving the accident in the past and never speaking of it again. After returning home, Anne sees Maggie again. The widow still hopes the police will find the person responsible for her husband's death. Seeing the woman's suffering becomes especially difficult for Anne. Now she not only knows the truth but also has to look every day into the eyes of someone she is deceiving. After that, Anne plans to meet Bill and finally end their relationship. She even asks James whether she could at least remain friends with the man, but her husband is firmly against it. Soon Inspector Marshall, who is investigating Joe Pierce's death, comes to the Mannings' London home. The policeman is interested in the party held on the night of the accident. James was barely there because he was held up at work, so the inspector asks the couple to provide a full guest list. The accident happened at around 6:15, not far from their house, and many of the invited guests would have been driving along the surrounding roads at that time. As Marshall talks to James, another troubling detail emerges. Maggie did not merely see the car that hit her husband. She is the police's key witness. There is one problem, however: the woman has a criminal conviction in her past. If the case goes to court, the defense will undoubtedly use it to cast doubt on the reliability of her testimony. After the inspector's visit, Anne finds it increasingly difficult to live with what she has done. The woman is tormented by nightmares at night, and one day she admits to James that she can no longer bear the constant lying. And again suggests telling the police the truth. But now James is the one who is firmly against it. In his view, they have gone too far and it is too late to turn back. Soon fate deals the man another unpleasant surprise. When a work meeting is cancelled, James unexpectedly returns to the country much earlier than usual. On the way home, he sees Anne driving away from Bill's house. This time his wife does not even try to deny anything. She admits that she lied. She really has not been able to end the relationship with her lover. James barely has time to process this latest betrayal when Bill himself calls. A new problem has emerged. An employee at the local filling station saw the scratch on his Range Rover and later noticed that the damage had disappeared. Desperate for an alibi, Bill asks James to confirm that at around 6:15 on the night of the accident, James called him at home. That would automatically mean that Bill could not physically have been on the road when Joe was hit. The conversation between James and Bill quickly turns into a personal argument. What James finds especially unbearable is the absurdity of the situation. He is helping his own wife's lover avoid the police while the man continues seeing Anne. Soon it becomes clear that Anne is planning to go to Paris with Bill for a couple of weeks. James asks his wife whether this means their marriage is over and whether she wants a divorce. But Anne herself seems not to know what she wants. In the end, the woman leaves with Bill. Inspector Marshall soon visits James, who has remained in London. The police have already established that Bill's car was involved in some kind of collision at about the same time Joe died. Bill, however, has an alibi. According to him, James called him at the time of the accident. The man realizes that the time has come to decide once and for all how far he is prepared to go for Anne. And he confirms the fabricated story. The inspector then tells him another important detail. Many years earlier, Maggie was convicted of theft while working in the home of Bill's parents. The main witness for the prosecution was Bill Boole himself. He claimed that he had seen the woman steal the money with his own eyes. Now Maggie is telling the police that on the night her husband died, she recognized Bill's car. The investigators naturally begin to wonder whether, after all these years, the woman is trying to take revenge on the man whose testimony once led to her conviction. Meanwhile, Anne is in Paris with Bill. James soon comes there on business as well and finds a message from his wife waiting at the hotel. She asks him to meet her. At first James decides to ignore the request, but eventually he calls in himself. The next day the couple meet in Park Monceau. James tells her that the inspector checked Bill's alibi. The man also tells his wife about Maggie's statement and the old theft case. And understands perfectly well that the police's suspicions about Maggie could save them. Guilt is eating the woman alive. Later, James speaks to Maggie herself. The woman tells him that she is absolutely certain Bill's car hit Joe. She has already made an official statement and believes that Bill simply invented an alibi or found someone willing to lie for him. During the conversation, Maggie also recalls her own past. After her theft conviction, she could not find work for 8 years. No one wanted to trust a cleaner with a criminal record. Everything changed after she met Anne. With Anne gone, James gradually begins seeking intimacy elsewhere himself. He remembers his colleague Priscilla, who had previously invited him to dinner at her place, and asks whether the invitation still stands. As a result, James spends the night at Priscilla's. In the morning, Bill calls him. The inspector had contacted Bill again the previous day to go over the alibi one more time. Bill confirmed the story about the phone call with James, after which Anne finally broke down. By morning she had disappeared. James is certain that his wife has gone to Joe's widow. The two men immediately drive there. Anne is indeed at Maggie's house. What is more, she has already called Inspector Marshall and asked him to come over. The woman desperately tries to tell Maggie the truth. Anne admits that she was the one driving that evening and that Joe died because of her. But Maggie refuses to believe her, convinced that Anne is only trying to protect her lover. James then confirms his wife's story. At that moment, Inspector Marshall arrives. It seems that Anne will finally have the chance to confess everything. But unexpectedly, Maggie herself decides to save her. Before Anne can say anything, the woman assures the inspector that there has been a misunderstanding. Anne called him only because she wanted to know whether there was any news in Joe's case. Marshall realizes that something is being kept from him and tries to get Maggie to talk. He even shows her a similar Range Rover and reminds her that she had previously identified Bill's car with complete confidence. But now Maggie withdraws her statement. With the key witness gone, the investigation effectively falls apart. After what happened, Bill plans to return to London and assumes Anne will go with him. But the woman unexpectedly refuses, saying that she wants to stay with James. So Anne returns to her husband. After Maggie withdraws her statement, she no longer has to live in daily fear of the police. For a while, it seems that Anne and James really may still be able to save their marriage. And perhaps they would have, if several months later James had not happened to run into Angus Burrell, an old university acquaintance who turns out to be Bill's cousin. It is from him that James learns the unexpected news. Bill is seriously ill with cancer. For James, the news becomes yet another moral test. He visits Bill in the hospital. Bill already looks very ill, but the first thing he asks about is Anne. When he learns that the woman is still living with her husband and seems to be gradually recovering from everything that happened, Bill is genuinely pleased. James offers to help in any way he can, but Bill asks only one thing of him: not to tell Anne about his illness. In the man's view, sooner or later she will learn of his death anyway, but by then it will be too late to change anything. But once again James is unable to keep silent. When he returns home, he tells his wife that Bill is terminally ill. Shaken, Anne clings to the hope that Bill might still recover, although James understands that he will not. Anne also cannot understand why her husband told her about the illness at all when Bill himself did not want her to know. James asks whether it would have been better if he had kept quiet. Anne's answer is especially painful for him. If James had said nothing, she would have stayed with him. Now the woman is going to leave him for Bill. She spends the following months by Bill's side as his illness gradually progresses. Meanwhile, James's life changes completely. The Mannings' country house passes to new owners, and the man is left alone. One evening, Bill's father, Lord Ralston, unexpectedly comes to see him. The man admits that he has wanted to speak to James for a long time. He thanks him for Anne. According to Lord Ralston, the woman has been incredibly devoted. Thanks to her care, Bill has lived far longer than the doctors expected. After that conversation, James goes to see Anne. Bill is at home and wants to spend what time he has left there. James tells his wife that he still loves her, but the man immediately explains that he has not come to make her return. If Anne ever thinks of him, James no longer wants those memories to make her feel guilty. He only wants her to remember their marriage, and the good things they shared, without pain. Anne replies that she does think of him. That is enough for James, and he lets the woman go back to Bill. Soon afterward, Bill dies peacefully in his sleep after a long illness. He is only 39 years old. At the funeral, James sees Anne again. The woman thanks James for coming and admits that Bill was actually very fond of him, even if James finds that hard to believe. After the ceremony, Anne does not plan to go back to the Bull family home with everyone else. Her part is over. The woman now plans to return to London. James offers to give her a lift, but Anne has already bought a train ticket. In the end, she only agrees to let the man drive her to the station. Before they leave, James asks when her train departs. Anne replies that it does not really matter, there is one every half hour. James then asks if she has time for lunch, and the woman agrees.